A reading from the book of Acts, chapter 14. No commentary. In Iconium, they reached a Jewish synagogue together and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Greeks came to believe. Although the disbelieving Jews stirred up and poisoned the minds of the Gentiles against the brothers, so they stayed for a considerable period, speaking out boldly for the Lord, who confirmed the word about this grace by granting signs and wonders to occur through the lands. The people of the city were divided. Some were with the Jews, some were with the others with the apostles. Even then, there was an attempt by both Gentiles and Jews, together with their leaders, to attack and stone them. They realized it and fled to the Lycaonian cities of Lystra and Derbe, and to surrounding countryside, where they continued to proclaim the good news. At Lystra, there was a crippled man, lame from birth, who had never walked. He listened to Paul speaking and looked intently at him, saw that he had the faith to be healed, and called out in a loud voice, "Stand up straight to your feet!" He jumped up and began to walk about. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, he cried out in Lycaonian, "The gods have come down to us in human form." Then they called Barnabas Zeus, Paul's Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. And this priest of Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance of the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates, for he, together with the people, intended to offer sacrifice. The apostles Barnabas and Paul tore at their garments. When they heard this, they rushed out into the crowd, shouting, why are you doing this? We are of the same nature as you, human beings. We proclaim to you the good news that you should turn from these idols to the living God, who made heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them. In the past generations, he allowed the Gentiles to go their own ways. Yet in bestowing his goodness, he did not leave himself without witness. For he gave you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons. He filled you with nourishment and gladness from your hearts. Even with these words, they scarcely restrained the crowds from offering sacrifice to them. However, some Jews from Antioch at Lycaonium arrived and won over the crowd. They stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing that he was dead. But when the disciples gathered around him, he got up and entered the city. On the following day, he left with Barnabas for Derbe. After they proclaimed the good news to that city, they made a considerable number of disciples. They returned to Lystra and Iconium and Antioch. They strengthened their spirits of the disciples and extolled them to persevere in the faith, saying, "It is necessary for us to undergo many hardships to enter the kingdom of God." They appointed presbyters for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting, condemned them to the Lord in whom they had put their faith. They traveled through Pisidia and reached Palmylia. They approached the word at Perga and went down to Attalia. When they sailed to Antioch, they had been condemned to the grace of God for the work they had now accomplished. And when they arrived, they called the church together and reported what the gods had done and how they had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. Then they spent no time with the disciples. Little time with the disciples. Okay. Thank you for spending your evening with us. We'll see you in chapter 15.